AMALearning, you're about to. Specification point 1.15. Explain how substances are transported into and out of cells, including by diffusion, osmosis and active transport. To successfully answer any GCSE question linked to this specification point, you will need to know how molecules diffuse, osmose, or are actively transported. Alongside this, you will need to give examples of each one. Diffusion is the spreading out of the particles of any substance in solution or particles of a gas, resulting in a net movement from an area of higher concentration to an area of lower concentration. In an exam question, you will need to mention the following points to get the marks. Diffusion is the net movement of particles from an area of high concentration to an area of lower concentration. Diffusion is a passive process. The first mark is for mentioning high concentration. The second mark is for mentioning the low concentration. And the third mark is for stating that diffusion is a passive process. The following examples of diffusion are examinable, and it is therefore important that you know that oxygen diffuses from the alveoli to the blood in the capillaries. Carbon dioxide diffuses from the blood in the capillaries into the alveoli. Urea diffuses out of the blood plasma into the kidneys to be excreted. Osmosis is the diffusion of water from a dilute solution to a concentrated solution through a partially permeable membrane. In an exam question, you will need to mention the following points to get the marks. Osmosis is the movement of water from a dilute solution where there is lots of water to a concentrated solution where there is little water through a partially permeable membrane. The cell membrane has gaps which allows water and small molecules to go through while stopping larger molecules. This is why it is classed as partially permeable. It allows some substances through but not other substances. Osmosis is a passive process. In an exam, the first mark is for mentioning dilute. The second mark is for mentioning concentrated. And the third mark is for adding partially permeable membrane. Most osmosis exam questions are linked to specification point 1.16, which is a core practical link to potatoes. In an exam question, you will need to mention the following points to get the marks. Active transport moves substances from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration against the concentration gradient. Active transport requires energy from respiration. This is why cells, such as the root hair cell, which use active transport, have lots of mitochondria. In an exam, the first mark is for mentioning low concentration. The second mark is for mentioning high concentration. And the third mark is for stating that active transport moves substances against the concentration gradient and requires energy from respiration. The following example of diffusion is examinable, and it is therefore important that you know that mineral ions absorbed through plant roots from very dilute solution in the soil is an example of active transport. In this example, there are more mineral ions inside the root hair cells than there are outside the root hair cell. Normally, the mineral ions would diffuse out of the root hair cell from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. As the plant will not want to lose the mineral ions, it will use active transport to move the mineral ions in the opposite direction. In other words, against the concentration gradient. This means the mineral ions are being moved from an area of low concentration to an area of high concentration. To do this, respiration has occurred in the mitochondria. This has released the necessary energy for active transport to occur. Another example of active transport is when sugar molecules are absorbed from lower concentrations in the gut into the blood, which contains higher concentrations. This sugar is then used for respiration. Our animations were designed by experienced UK-trained teachers. We have been achieving amongst the best results in the country for many years, and we decided it was time to share our success. Have you just amaled and want to amal some more? Don't forget to like, subscribe and share to keep yourself up to date with the latest uploads. AMALearning, you just did.